Thank you all so much for joining us in this session after lunch and an exciting group in the ballroom. If you still are unable to hear me in the back, give me a signal. Good? Okay. Well, welcome to our session about the Digital Navigator model and how to start one in your community. I am Abby Waldrupe, and I started last week working at NDIA, where I am following in my new coworker Paulo's footsteps, working as the Digital Navigator manager. And 2 weeks ago, I was working at the State Library of North Carolina, where I did work with Digital Navigators, where we were doing a statewide Digital Navigator helpline that served public libraries across the state. I'm excited that our panelists represent some very unique experiences with different kinds of Digital Navigator projects of their own. And I'm joined by Shauna Edson, who is the Technology and Digital Equity Manager at Salt Lake City Public Library. Applause break. Andy Stutzman is the Project Director for Civic Technology at Drexel University's Excite Center. And Gina Birch is the Program Coordinator at the Ashbury Senior Center. Just to give us a little bit of a background in Digital Navigators, let's remember back when COVID-19 began in the spring of 2020, when the need for digital equity was really more critical than ever, while our traditional methods of delivering digital inclusion work were no longer logistically viable. The NDIA community, you all, worked quickly to develop a framework for delivering high-impact, holistic digital skill and access assistance to individuals remotely. To begin with, this assistance was usually provided over the phone through repeated one-on-one interactions and found success when built upon the trust between digital navigators and their community and the organizations they were working in. The Digital Navigator model resonated with the work and goals of many organizations and has proven to be flexible, replicable, and adaptable to the unique needs of many communities. The Digital Navigator model is constantly being refined with best practices from the field, and NDIA shares the most up-to-date information and resources on our Digital Navigator webpage, so you should be sure to check that out after our panel wraps up. And this panel represents such a variety that exists amongst the different implementations of Digital Navigator models, and I'm excited to dig into each of their programs. So let's start by hearing about each of your programs, the basic structure of your programs, including when it launched, where it's located, and what kind of communities you serve. And we'll start with you, Shauna.
All right. Does this work? Can you hear me? All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to this session to hear us talk about Digital Navigators. My project started in October of 2020, but we started working on the proposal several months earlier in April of 2020 as a response to the pandemic. So things shut down in March, and we realized when our public computer labs closed, we were no longer able to serve those community members coming in. So we wanted to try to, as quickly as possible, provide an alternative service to those community members. So Salt Lake City is 210,000 individuals. We worked with the NDIA to review census data, current census data, as well as some local research that was happening around the pandemic to help identify the areas that were heaviest hit in our community by COVID. And those turned into, we identified the least connected communities. We narrowed it down to 3 specific neighborhoods that we wanted to work with: Glendale, Poplar Grove, and Rose Park, if anybody's familiar with Salt Lake City. It was a wide variety of individuals in those communities. About half of the individuals spoke Spanish, so our program was bilingual. We did everything that we could in English and Spanish. Did I answer all the questions?
Yeah, I think so. We'll ask more questions as we go. Andy, what about your program?
Yeah, I'm privileged to work in Philadelphia, where we have a tight-knit group of people that have been working for over 10 years together on digital inclusion initiatives, as well as the city itself, who funds and has funding for these initiatives for the last 10 years. So in May of 2020, the city put out an RFP for organizations to become digital navigators. So Drexel University was selected as one of those 3 organizations. I mainly work within the West Philly area. So we have a promise zone around in the neighborhoods around Drexel, which is a federally designated area focused on help assisting families that that are low income and need assistance with education. And so we're mainly focused in that promise zone area, 19104 zip code. But that's about 50% of the people we serve. So right now, I'm a unique model. We use undergraduate students for the most part. We've used students from Penn, but mostly from Drexel as well. That work as digital navigators, answer our Google Voice line. We do basic assistance, helping them get connected. We also have taken over computer recycling for Drexel. We had a small computer recycling program there, and since the pandemic, we basically have just taken it over, and we are refurbishing computers and working with refurbishers in the area to distribute those computers, and then connecting them back with our digital literacy programs. Drexel is huge in civic engagement. We're trying to be the most civically engaged university out there in the country. And so we have our own community center where we're actually doing digital literacy computer lab. We have a computer lab there that has mostly stayed open for the most part during the pandemic. And so we're focused on getting people in those programs as well. So yeah, I think that's what we've been doing.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Gina with the Ashbury Senior Computer Community Center. I've been with Ashbury since August of 2020, and as soon as I started my job, one of my first meetings was a Digital Navigator working group with NDIA. So we were definitely really involved in helping to build this model, and we're finally able to get our own Digital Navigators off the ground in October of this past year, 2021. We work together with several organizations, including CMHA, which is the Cleveland Metropolitan Housing Authority, Cleveland Housing Network, East Cleveland Public Library, Cleveland Public Library, Cuyahoga County Public Library, my organization, as well as an organization called MetroEast. I think there's 7 of us all together. But we actually work together to build a navigator program for the city of Cleveland. So we all have 1 or 2 navigators. I think everyone has either 1 or 2 navigators at their organization. And we did all of our training for those navigators together. So we had a big group training, and then everyone kind of broke off into their organizations to get the specific training they needed for their specific location. So in Cleveland, our big thing is we have a hotline, just like was it Abby, Shauna? Shauna, yes, statewide. I was like, whoa, that's a big deal. So in Cleveland, we're working on a greater Cleveland area hotline. We just started advertising. We were all really excited to finally get those out. We have some really great looking billboards. I believe our URL is clevelandnavigators.org. I will double check that for you before we leave the panel. But we basically have on that page resources that our navigators can use and also that end users are able to access to help you find, low-cost internet and devices and training in the area. In addition to the hotline, we also have one-on-one assistance, and that's both in person, of course, and over the phone, whether it's the hotline or incoming to our organizations directly, where our navigators are able to direct participants to resources and help them enroll in these actual, low-cost programs, enroll them in the Affordable Connectivity Program, formerly known as the Emergency Broadband benefits, things like voting registration and telehealth appointments, other online processes. Our digital navigators are there for that one-on-one assistance. Our organization specifically also has our navigators assist in the classroom. So we do basic digital literacy classes, usually to about 6 to 12 people at a time. So we have an instructor in the room, and we also have a navigator in the room whenever possible, so that we have someone that can go around to people that are participating in class and help them get on the same page and make sure that they're understanding the concepts as they're being explained, so that the instructor doesn't have to constantly stop in the middle of class to, attend to one individual and everyone else has to kind of wait to catch up. That's about it.
Thanks. So you all, I think, all started to allude to this, but can you tell us more about who is a digital navigator in your organization program model, and include what skills and qualities you're looking for and what kind of background you're hoping to find when you're hiring or selecting your digital navigators? Andy, I think you mentioned undergrads. Let's start with you.
Sure. Yeah, we use undergraduate students. Right now, we take work study students, which is great. So if students have work study funding, they can actually get paid to do the work. We also do take volunteers. Like I mentioned, we had some volunteers from the University of Pennsylvania and also some Drexel volunteers recently as well. And Yeah, for that model, we were looking for people that are really that have that or that customer service kind of quality. That's the main thing we look for. I can train them in the technology. I can train them in the other things, but it's that customer service piece of it. And we're also very culturally sensitive. We know that the folks, the community around us, we really want to get students to understand the community that they're living in. So we do training around that as well first. And that's offered through our Lindy's Center for Civic Engagement, plus we also do some of that as part of the Digital Navigator. So students know the communities they're working with. And then one thing we're working on getting right now is Drexel offers 16 hours a year for faculty and staff to actually have civic engagement time. So it's civic engagement hours, similar to like vacation time. So we're actually working on a program where faculty and staff can come in and volunteer 1 or 2 hours a week and actually do the work as well. So I'm hoping to grow that program.
Gina, I saw you were nodding a lot, and then I saw you take a drink of water.
No, I'm coming. Okay, sure. So I am most proud of the first navigator that we hired is actually a previous student of Ashbury. She graduated one of our basic digital literacy courses and came back for more. And we actually brought her on, and she's been learning more every day. And I think that our participants really feel connected to her, like they're instantly comfortable because she was literally right where they were, like not that long ago. So I think that's something that we will continue to look into. Our other navigator, we listed the position on our website, ZipRecruiter, Indeed, and the qualities that we were really looking for are the ability to communicate effectively with participants of varying backgrounds. So we have a few Spanish-speaking people, but really it's just where people are from locally. So I mean, what part of town and how people were raised and how people are used to speaking and interacting and things of that nature, and just being able to kind of flow with whoever you're talking to and get on that same page. Teaching experience is a plus. We do look for that. We do require a degree or at least equivalent experience, and strong in-person and over-the-phone presence, just so that people are engaged. Of course, proper etiquette and hands-on experience with the technology that they'll be teaching. Of course, like Andy said, that's something that is easily trainable. So we look for everything else first, and then hands-on experience with the technology is just like a bonus.
Okay, Shauna, what are you looking for?
I think y'all covered a lot of it. Our project is really focused on some specific communities, so we really wanted to have folks from those communities work as our digital navigators. So that was one of the top things that we were looking for. Also, great customer service, being able to work with people in that capacity. Language communication skills were essential, as well as knowledge of everyday resources and cultures in our communities. So we wanted folks who already knew where the gaps were in those communities and already knew where the resources were, if that meant going down the street to the Jiffy Lube to hook up to Wi-Fi to apply for a job. Like, we wanted people who already had as much of that knowledge as possible when there were no other options. Obviously, we wanted to be able to connect people to their own broadband and devices and things like that.
Thanks. Okay, Gina, the Cleveland program was really intentional about choosing your community partners and community-based organizations. So can you tell us a little about the decision-making process for picking those partners?
So the answer to this question is actually really simple. We were already together. We have a local coalition called the Digital Ambassadors that includes the 7 organizations that I listed earlier. I probably should have waited until this question to list all of those folks. But yeah, so we were already kind of meeting. I think we were meeting monthly, and then we just kicked it up to weekly, and we're like, let's work on this project. Let's seek out funding. Let's figure it out together. And we worked together with the Cleveland Foundation, which I'll elaborate on in a later question. But we were already in a group, and it just made sense.
Great. That makes it easy. Already connected with the right people. Andy, you all in Philly used partnerships to provide your device distribution. So can you tell us a little bit about how the device piece worked for your program?
Absolutely. We, the city itself actually created a program called PHL Donate Tech, and they worked with a group called Retriever, where any residential household could actually call up Retriever, or call up the city's hotline, 311, their information line, and get their device picked up and recycled. And it was sent to 3 different partners we have. So Temple University, they actually have one of a national model of computer recycling and how a university could do it. So they're one of the refurbishers. Electronic Access Foundation in New Jersey, and then Nerd It Now, who's out of Delaware and other places now too. So 3 organizations that those computers were sent to, refurbished, and then sent back to the Digital Navigator programs. So it's just this great coalition, working together. And as Gina said, a lot of us have been working together for years anyways with digital inclusion initiatives. And then with Drexel itself, we had our small computer recycling center that we had just started trying to model it off what our partners at Temple were doing. And that has basically fallen on me. I basically have taken over that since then. So our digital navigators, we have Drexel's a co-op model, so we have co-ops come and work for us every full time for 6 months. And my co-op right now is recycling, refurbishing computers. That's her majority of her job right now, is a digital navigator. So that is another thing we're training navigators to do as well. So,
Great.
Yep.
Okay, Shauna, can you tell us about the Digital Navigator program, how it fit into your library and your strategic plan, and also how it's impacted the library strategy moving forward?
Yeah. So 2 years ago, before the pandemic hit, one of the most frequent questions I got in my role in the library is, how do libraries play into digital equity? Like, we know they have public computer labs, they know we have a wheelhouse for digital skills, but really how does the whole picture fit into libraries? So we used this pilot project as an opportunity to look at what people responded to when we asked them what their digital skills goal was. We compiled all of those responses and coded those to our strategic framework. We expected a lot of things to fall into career services, applying for jobs and resumes. There was also an expectation that a lot of people were going to be using technology for education. We were really surprised at how many people said they wanted to use it to connect with family and friends, and they viewed accessing and using the technology as positive growth for themselves. So through this process, we found that it hits all 6 of our key strategic framework points. And so moving forward, we're taking what we learned and we're shifting our service model within our library to look at different roles that people play and how we can incorporate what we've learned into their work. So one big thing that we did in our public computer labs, we would usually send people to go see one specific person that could help them with more in-depth questions. We flipped that, and now we have roaming tech support so that somebody doesn't have to log off the computer. They don't have to stop whatever they were working with and pack up all their belongings and go down and hope that this person is available to help them. Now all of our staff can call and say, hey, this person needs help. Can you come work with them on the computer? And we're able to better meet them where they are now.
All right, thank you all. I have one more question I want to make sure you all get a chance to answer, and then we're going to take some questions from the audience, so be thinking of your questions. But I would ask what advice you would have to give to an organization that is considering starting a Digital Navigator program. And let's start at this end again here, Shauna, and we'll work our way down.
We were really surprised how many people needed devices. We were all ready to go with getting people connected to home broadband and helping them pick the best connectivity plan for them. But we were overwhelmed. About 80% of our folks, I think, sorry, I haven't looked for a minute, I believe that's what it was, needed devices. So that was something we learned. The census data and everything else suggested that it was internet that people would need the most.
Yeah, I would say, around that same topic is just because the data tells you that people don't have computers and don't have internet doesn't mean they're ready to call a number as soon as you give it out there. So finding a way and understanding who you're talking with and best ways to communicate that information. Because when we opened up our Digital Navigator programs, there's 3 main orgs, I think I mentioned. we advertised it. We put it in. We're in a pandemic. We didn't have physical stuff. We're putting it out in digital newsletters. We're trying to. I had one group that was able to send some physical flyers out there. We were trying to get the information out there, but we just expected a flood of phone calls. We were getting 3-4 a week initially. I mean, it was not much at all. So, understanding how to get that information out to people. Right now, we're about to start a text messaging. Get a text messaging system because I know everyone reads a text message, right? So, if I can get that information out there via text message is the best. But as soon as that word got out there that we are giving out free computers, 90% of our calls, we get almost 100 calls a week now, and 90% of them are about needing a computer. And we're one of the Digital Navigator orgs in Philly that is giving out computers to anyone that calls. We do try and focus in the Promise Zone, the neighborhoods around Drexel, but anyone that calls, we try to help them out. We typically have 20 people on the wait list just because we can't keep up with it. But that's one way to get the word out is tell people you're giving away free computers, and it gets out apparently. So yeah.
Gina, what advice do you have?
Everything you said was awesome. Fully agree. Loving it. So what I've discovered, just based on how our program came together, find some partners if you can. If there's anyone around you that can add value to your Navigator program or that you can add value to their Navigator program, especially if they don't have one yet, I think that would be a great place to start is seeing who around you might be able to work with you. Also, don't reinvent the wheel. I love that NDIA has made this structure that is so adaptable, but if you take that backbone structure and then you talk to all these people that are already doing it, and then, of course, there are, maybe a dozen Navigator programs at least nationally. So, we've got people in different states, different cities, different demographics, different methods, different responsibilities. And if you take all that information and put it up against that model and apply the specific needs of your community, I think you'll have the best possible outcome.
And I'll say that we love talking about our work, so call us, contact us.
Good. Great, what a nice plug. Well, I definitely have some more questions that I would love to ask you, but let's see first if anyone here has a question they would like to ask. We have a microphone over here so that you can be heard on the live stream. So if you're able to just come on up to the mic if you have a question, and we'll go from there.
Hi, I'm James Welker. I'm representing Charlotte's Center for Digital Equity, and I'm actually the chair of the Digital Navigation and Tech Support Work Stream. And I'm interested in the tech stack that you guys use. I heard Google Voice. I heard there's a statewide level number. There's a number that you're creating for your city. How are tickets handled? I'm interested in those issues of capacity. We're looking at in my particular capacity, how do we leverage automation? How do we leverage how corporations handle thousands of inquiries and, handle them in a coordinated way? But we want to learn from other cities. What are you using to handle all of that volume? You're talking about hundreds of calls a week and things.
I want to go before Shauna because I feel like she has all the answers. So we use a Google Voice number that is linked to each of the organizations. I think they max out at 6, so we have 2 organizations that have to switch back and forth. But Google Voice basically allows you to toggle on and off numbers that ring and numbers that don't. They all ring at the same time, so whoever answers first gets the call. If you answer it and the call's not for you, you can hit star and it forwards to the rest of the numbers that are on. So once we figured out how that worked, it's pretty effective. Now, as far as when the calls come in, our navigators have a Google form that's been created that collects demographic information, not personal information, that answers questions and data concerning whether this person has a computer, whether they have internet, where they live, how much money they make, their race, whether they're on, some sort of benefit, whether they qualify for, certain different things. So when a call comes in, whoever answers should fill out that form. All that form data gets kicked into like pie charts and spreadsheets, and Google just does everything for you. So we've been relying heavily on Google Voice and Google Forms to handle that. We also have a Google Sheets document for tracking voicemails and missed calls and Gmail. So everything's pretty much on Google.
Want to go next? Being a web developer, I've wanted to create my own web system for this, but I don't get paid for that, or have the time for that, unfortunately. So we started out with a variety of products. Google Voice is definitely the first thing I went to, because that's just the easiest for having one number. I can have multiple digital navigators logging in, checking calls. Having that forward, we have that, any voicemails are forwarded to our email. We initially used ZenWorks as like a ticketing system. We don't have a lot of funding for technology. That's the biggest, I would say that's the biggest probably need, as far, wouldn't say it's the biggest need, but that is a need with the Digital Navigator programs, is being able to fund a technology stack for this. So we used ZenWorks because it was fairly cheap, but the reporting for it was horrible. I couldn't get anything out of it when it came to actual reporting. We used SpiceWorks for ticketing after that because that was free, but that was still very similar issues as well. Every time you get a phone call, we play a lot of telephone tag because we aren't a live line. We call it a warm line. People have to leave a voicemail message with us, and we call them back. But every time they call us back, it creates a new ticket. So it was confusing for us. So just recently, I built out a system using Airtable, if anyone's familiar with that as well. So we don't have anything. We don't have automation with creating tickets right now. Our navigators have to go in and check. They check email for any new voicemails that gets emailed there, and any emails we might get, and then they create a ticket manually within Airtable. We utilize that right now too for reporting everything. So.
I just have one thing to add. We also used Google Voice, but we used Monday.com for our customer management system. It wasn't automated. We had a project manager who would, so somebody would call in. They had an intake form, and then our project manager would assign, based on the information taken on the intake form, them to the digital navigator that would best meet that individual's needs. We served right around 500 individual phone calls over 8 months, and so one individual was able to handle that amount of work. If it was much larger, it would be much harder.
Hi, I'm Diane Connery with the Pottsboro Library. I'm wondering if you have identified ways to attract people, lure doesn't sound good, attract people who are not interested in learning, or they say they don't like computers, or they don't want to learn. Have you found anything that...
That's a hard question. I work with seniors a lot, so we deal a lot with overcoming those barriers, and I think a lot of it is just being approachable, and then explaining over and over again that there is a way to be safe online. Everything is not trying to get you, and even for those things that are trying to get you, there are things that you can do to keep yourself safe. I think those repeated interactions are definitely a big part of it, because the first time you talk to somebody, they might be like, I don't know. Like, you might get them from, oh, heck no, to, I don't know. But then they come back and they're like, maybe. And, okay, you're starting to make sense. So the other thing is, once you find out a specific thing that your user needs to do, wants to do, would love to do, and then you can start getting them on a track to learn that thing, they start picking up foundational concepts along the way. So if you find out they have grandkids in another state, we can make their first goal to learn how to do FaceTime, and then just keep it in that scope. And then once they are a little bit more comfortable with that one thing, they're gonna be like, you know what, I wanna send my grandchild some shoes, or send them a birthday present, or whatever. So then it's like Amazon, or whatever retail website. So I think making it specific to the user, and making things that are big and scary, like very specific to the person and necessary to that person, make things a little bit more palpable to people that have a fear of technology.
One thing that we did that is it was my favorite part of this whole project, pilot project, is that we did a foot campaign. We walked, library staff walked about 200 miles going through the neighborhoods in our focus communities and talking to individuals. We had door hangers, bilingual door hangers, and we were super surprised how many people were like, oh, hey, I need help doing this, and we would help them right there on their front porch. 15 minutes later, they were good to go. And that was just really, really impactful. And we did notice an uptick of folks calling in for help with getting home internet after that.
One thing I would say is, well, we're kind of cheating a little bit in some ways for us. Though the city itself is actually funding outreach for this, so, which is great. So Philly again is wonderful with the funding opportunities, and they're actually funding programs around the North Star digital literacy programs right now. So we have 40 different organizations that are offering the North Star digital literacy training in Philly, which is wonderful. And I'm offering an incentive now of a free laptop. Working closely with Comcast, we got 150 free laptops recently. And we also have refurbished laptops from other donations we've gotten from the programs I mentioned previously. So that's one way we're trying to get people in the door right now is the incentive. You complete the 4 basic modules in North Star, you get that certificate, you can get a brand new laptop. Hey, I might take it, right? The other thing what we're coming across now actually is people calling in saying they're interested, but they don't want to come into classes. It's like, but if you don't know how to use the computer, how can I get you to do this via Zoom? So we're trying, that's the other thing we're trying to, the chicken and the egg thing right now we're trying to figure out. So that is something we're going to see if we can do some sort of online sessions for people as well. That might just be creating videos. If I know they have a smartphone, I can send them some videos. This is how you get connected. So we're working, see if we can do that with some of our students make those videos. I don't know, we'll see.
I had my notes written down, but I figured I'd just put those away. So I'm Stephen Miner. I'm with Community Tech Network. What we do is we support older adults by providing them with a device, 5 hours of tutoring, an additional 10 hours of tutoring if they want. Now, we're piloting the Digital Navigator position. I'm currently piloting it. We call it the Tech Support Navigator. One of the main issues that I keep experiencing is our learners don't come to me for support. They'll go back to their instructor for support because they're comfortable with their instructor. Yep. So my biggest, issue that I'm trying to overcome is how do I make our learners, more trustful of the navigator role once I step out of it?
Mm-hmm.
I think I have something to say. So I think it's twofold. One, it's on the navigator. And then 2, making the expectation up front known of here is who you go to when you're not with your instructor. So like at the first day of class or like at that first interaction moment, you will hand them their like stack of things, which is like, here's your materials, here's your, sign this and, all your enrollment. And then also here is your tech support card. Here is the number that you call when you need help. And then so like going forward the whole time, they're like, okay, so if I mess up or if I need something, I can call this number. And then also having the instructor reiterate that during class. So I think once they reach out the first time and start building that relationship, then it's on the navigator to kind of draw them in and start, building that relationship.
And can the navigator show up to class once or twice? This is let them see that face, have them see the navigator, so they get familiar with them, as well.
It's all remote.
It's all remote. Okay.
Yeah.
Show up on Zoom.
Yeah. Exactly. That's
Can be one of the windows.
Yeah.
That'd be smart.
Yeah.
Maybe
Have
just
them-
for a second, yeah.
Exactly.
Pop
Yeah.
in.
Pop in on Zoom, answer a couple questions, be there so they get to know that person.
Yeah, see the face, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Owen. I lead the support team at PCs for People. We are serving people through refurbished computers and internet and leaning more into how do we continue to elevate how we help people be successfully keeping those items in use in their home, right? And so what I'm trying to work through is any advice that you have in terms of building kind of a core curriculum for what people commonly need. So you were talking about Amazon or FaceTime. Mm-hmm. When I hear digital navigation, one thing I'm here to ask people about is what does that mean to you? What are those things that are digital? Casey, who leads us, would say anything digital, and I'm saying I need to train reps to answer some questions. And so how are you creating those core skills that you start from and then build upwards from when people have kind of more edge questions or things that they need? Hopefully
Andy
that makes
had
sense.
mentioned North Star. We use North Star. We use several different things for curriculum. We use one called Digital Learn. If you go on our website, asc3.org, and scroll down to the logos, you can actually click on North Star, click on Digital Learn, and see the content. GCF Global is a free resource for everyone, and they have, just loads of content. I think they've added more recently. They have so much stuff.
And that's what North Star uses, by the way.
Oh, they use GCF?
Yeah. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So North Star is and GCF and Digital Learn are great. But what I would say for PCs for People is find a partner training organization that's wherever you're trying to set this up. So in Cleveland, we have a PCs for People in St. Clair, and I mean, we are like this. I mean, so like every time, like if they have a training need, they'll reach out. If we have a device need, which we always do, we reach out. So I would say like, let's see, our past like 8 cohorts, I'm sure it's probably more, like all the computers come from PCs for People. They have, I'm not sure if it's everywhere, but in Cleveland they have the desktops are just free for seniors. So since we're training mostly seniors, we tell them how many people and show that they're qualified, and we just get them in there before class, and the students can take them home as an incentive after class. So it kind of really works well because they don't have to worry about the training, and we don't have to worry about the devices, and all we have to do is just talk.
Well, I'm on the edge of just trying to do those things. Right now, we get 1% of our calls are people asking for advice, but that's my biggest thing with it. We get people access, we get them computers, but do they know what to do with them? Do they know, you don't know what you don't know, right? So do you know that kindergarten registration in Philadelphia, it's all online. You have to be able to upload PDFs, all that, Okay, now you have a computer, these are the things you can do with them. So getting people to understand what they've been missing out on, and making those connections there, I think is just a really important piece. And that's kind of my next step now. Okay, we're helping getting people get access. We're helping them get computers. Now we need to work on that next piece of building that understanding, not just digital literacy, but understanding the services, understanding what's out there that they can connect to as well. So that doesn't probably answer your question.
I'm on that journey with you. So.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah.
You just don't want the computer they worked so hard to get through your program to be in the closet or somewhere that. Yeah.
Well, and that's my biggest fear as well is when we're doing refurbished computers is giving someone a 10-year-old computer is not digital equity, right? Mm-hmm. So trying to find that funding, trying to at least to get newer computers, and we've been lucky to have some great donations from like Unisys Corporation and working with Digitunity on some of these things to get newer business class computers. They're 4 or 5 years old. That's my biggest fear with the pandemic is as we're doing refurbishing computers is giving someone 10-year-old computers, and that's not what I want to do because that is not equity in any way. So that's a whole nother conversation. So, yeah.
If I'll ask a follow-up question maybe related. If you all do any kind of a skills assessment at any point in intake that might help determine what areas people need to start with, or if you have an area that you like to start with?
Again, North Star does that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So North Star has an assessment piece there that you can actually watch someone try and do certain skills, and you can then you understand exactly where their needs are, and that, which is great.
I love the North Star assessments because they each have a lesson. Well, most of them. The newer ones are kind of missing lessons, but once you take the assessment, then you can actually go back over the information in great detail. I mean, from how to turn the computer on and off all the way to, like super complicated stuff. And then for our basic, like entry-level class, we actually have a 2-page paper assessment that has fill in the blanks for the parts of the desktop, parts of the laptop. We have multiple choice, and then we have true and false. All super basic, but it's basically out of 30 points, and then we take it once at the beginning and take it once at the end to see the improvement.
We used a skills assessment document. You can find it on the NDIA website. Paulo, hiding back there, was a big part of creating that document. And our skills assessment is a little different, and it's not asking really specific how-to computer questions, but things like, do you have an email address? How often do you use this? It's a little more abstract to help us understand better what they're using the internet for and what experiences they've had.
Thank you all.
Okay. Hi, I'm with Computer Corps. We're headquartered in Alexandria, Virginia, and serve Virginia. I just want to say this great discussion. We use SpiceWorks, Airtable, North Star, and we didn't know all of you, so it's cool. We're in the same space. My question is, we've just signed a contract to run a call center/help center. We've been calling them community navigators. I will now call them digital navigators. We hire our own students, so I like what you were saying about your student being there. They don't have college degrees. They're very, very much like the other learners we have. So I'm concerned we're going to be putting like signs on the buses and doing advertising. How do you tell people, like, this is not for high-end people who are going to call us and, like, you know, how do you fix the screen on the computer, or, you know, how do we keep, like, I love all the types of questions you're getting. That's kind of like the population we serve. But how do you keep from, I don't know, I don't want to be too restrictive on what we do. We're also training like tier 1 help desk type skills among our students to learn ticketing systems. So I do want them to be able to answer questions, but how do you kind of control, you know, what calls you get? So I kind of feel you when you say you only got 4 calls, and then Susan, when you were speaking earlier, you said now you have thousands of calls. This is so exciting, but and I want to be able to handle the capacity of all the calls that might come. So we're still like in the soft start. We just need help. What do we do next if we're successful?
Yeah, don't call yourself a genius bar. That's what I was yeah. They expect everything from you at that point. That's being, you know, I used to say basic tech support, but I think a lot of it is digital navigation. Those are the things you kind of limit yourself to. We are helping people navigate things online digitally. That is the most like tech support you offer. So just being clear about that. So helping people with digital navigation tasks. That's probably the best advice I can have. Don't saying tech support is so broad. So people are expecting screen fixes. They're expecting certain things. But yeah.
Anything to add, Gina?
If I could add one of the things, this is a huge area, and I would suggest to NDIA that they maybe do some webinars on the technology, the back end technology of what we need to do the work, because, right, if you're in one scenario, you're handling, you know, 100 customers a month, you can use a Google Voice and Excel sheet, and it works great. But as we grew our call centers, as we grew our outreach, right, all that didn't work as well. And not everybody can afford to hire a Salesforce consultant, right, to build these, you know, systems. And the pricing's all over the board, right, as well as the privacy policies and who owns what. So there are a lot of things, you know, to be able to sort of investigate and understand. It's exhausting. And now it's like you leave your hair. One of the things that
Susan, would you like to use the mic so they can be heard on the the live stream? We want to hear your good comments.
we have had to learn so much, Zane, in terms of the technology that's the back end. And you want to do it so it grows with you, right? You don't want to start with the most expensive or the most capable first, because you just don't know where you're going necessarily, right? And you want to have what's appropriate for the level of traffic that you're handling. And so one of the things, though, a couple things we did that have been helpful is we hired from an ISP somebody who runs call centers, right? So we learned the technology that folks actually use to run call centers. And one of the things that's happened because of the internet is so much of that technology is cheaper these days. So when I was talking about all the ads and the calls, it's like everything we do has a different tracking code, right? And it costs the call center, the IVR, the interactive voice response unit, you know, it cost us maybe a couple $100 a month to, you know, manage that. And we can, so when, you know, we have 14 CBOs, when 2 of them were closed for vacation, we could reroute those calls to the other CBOs, right? Easily. So it's just to say there are a lot of options out there, and I think this is such a robust area that, you know, it's worth asking NDIA just to do a session and have people share their knowledge, because there are a lot of things out there that you can use.
Thanks, Susan. I think, was somebody about to also comment on the
I was just going to
question?
add on to just that answering that question that was last asked about how to control the traffic. I mean, we're very early in the stages of our hotline, and I do think what was just said was incredibly important about having something that would grow with you, and now it has me reconsidering all kinds of things. But if you check out clevelandnavigators.org, you can see some of the language that we use in our advertising to try to, like you said, be very clear about what our navigators are here to help you do. And then again with I wish I had a picture of the billboards. maybe we can get it somehow. But yeah, if you check out clevelandnavigators.org, you can see like whoever reads that is going to be like, oh, if I need help with this, then I can call. And someone that is like has a super high level question is going to be like, oh, this is definitely not for me. So, and it doesn't take a lot of words, but I think it's just being particular about the words that you use to make sure that the message is clear.
And Salesforce is not a bad option, and I hate using the word Salesforce because as soon as I do that, LinkedIn blows up. I get like all these being an IT professional, LinkedIn just goes crazy. But I actually manage some Salesforce databases for Drexel, and as a nonprofit though, you get 10 free licenses. It's a little bit scary, but all the training is free online as well. It's actually not a bad option. So if you're a nonprofit, if you've not used Salesforce before, you get 10 free licenses. They're actually very friendly to nonprofits, so it's not a bad solution as well for that. Yeah.
If I can also add, just from my past experience doing Digital Navigator programs, that it was an easy transition. Sometimes we trained our navigators to understand the threshold of what we were going to do and what we're not going to reinstall a screen for you, which we were all on the phone, so that would have been difficult. But when they found that they were coming near a threshold of this is beyond our scope, we would then redirect to pointing them towards a resource, because largely what the digital navigators were doing for all of their work was pointing towards existing resources. So being able to find a resource where you can point people who need more or who desire more technical support or more advanced skills, then it isn't a matter of telling them we can't help you. It's a matter of helping them in a different way. And so that can be a more positive way to end that interaction. I'm not sure if a moderator is supposed to speak that much. Did you have anybody else want to add to that question, or are there any more questions from the audience? We have a few more minutes.
I was going to say, I know we did a good job.
A return. I have more questions too, but we can take yours first.
A return question.
Yes.
Kind of insurance and liability questions. If we have, and I heard somebody say that we have, we have these digital navigators. We also have the teachers in the classrooms. And we're doing things like through Zoom, we do screen control, like let me show you how to do it. I'm starting to think, like, as this thing gets bigger, are there liability issues that people come up against? What should we do to kind of protect ourselves and our clients?
Has anybody thought about liability?
For just talking, like just offering advice over the web, over like a Zoom?
Well, like you're controlling those screens.
Okay, yeah.
So we have someone, she's one of our instructors, she's writing her dissertation, and she is always concerned about what people might be seeing on her screens.
Right.
We do remote support over the phone, but we haven't done remote support as far as controlling another person's cursor online, which I know you can do with things like TeamViewer and even with Zoom, maybe, possibly. But I think a waiver would probably take care of that, as long as someone, or even a verbal agreement, just to make sure that they know that that you're not liable for any changes, that you're not there to do anything bad, but if something goes awry, that it's not your fault, something like that.
And even trying to record that, ask them, okay, for liability reasons, can I record this while we do this work together? Yeah.
And Donna, just your kind comment about being glad to meet people doing things like you reminds me to mention that we have a Digital Navigator working group with NDIA, and we have a meeting coming up in mid-March. So if you're interested in being added to that working group and connecting with some more people, you can just email me at abby@digitalinclusion.org, and that's spelled ABI at digitalinclusion.org, and we'll get you added to that group.
Hi, Edwin with the Los Angeles Public Library. We have our own version of digital navigators. We call them cybernauts.
Did you say cybernauts?
Yes,
like
cybernauts. Have you guys looked into like chat support or like text message support, which is something that we did offer at one point, but then had to remote during the pandemic?
Like I say, through Google Voice, we do some tech support, but that's mainly just scheduling computer pickups, things like that. But we don't. It's not as much tech support that way. But we are, like I mentioned, at least for the marketing, we're looking at doing text-based marketing, so maybe we could offer some support that way too.
Andy, you're saying text message? Yes, text
message,
support.
sorry, text.
We actually had quite a bit of text communication between our digital navigators and the folks they were supporting. People were more responsive to that than phone calls. So we found it to be a good platform.
Any chat on the computer?
That is so smart. Like, I'm getting information here.
Yeah, that's why we're not cybernauts.
Right, we're not like, I aspire.
Cybernaut level.
So, we have not implemented that, although we do have an email address and the phone number is textable. I haven't done a survey of our city, but I know that a lot of people we get at the Ashbury Center don't have the skills to instant message. Some of them have the skills to text. So maybe we need to like do a little research around that and see if one of those would be more effective to offer. I like it.
Mobile devices come to mind, and sometimes I know I've tried to instant message customer support while doing something on my phone, and that multitasking doesn't work very well. So that might be one barrier, but it would depend on your population.
Hi, how's it going? My name is Edric, and I'm a digital navigator at Highlands Community Charter School in Sacramento. One of my questions, as some of you have thousands of students that you also have to help, we have a lot of language barriers, and at this moment, from what I know, North Star doesn't offer different language barriers for helping students with we have like, I want to say 7 or 8 different languages that we go through. Have you guys thought about, or do you have any ideas of possible alternatives to help students similar to North Star with language barriers?
Oh,
No,
sorry.
good. No.
I believe GCF has multiple languages available, and it's several. I don't know how many, but it's like more than 3 for sure. Like they have like languages with different alphabets. I know they have Spanish. I think they have German. They've got several languages on GCF. I think it's gcfglobal.org.
I was meeting with North Star recently, and they actually said they have a contract working on language support now. So hopefully it's coming out soon.
Spanish should be coming in the summer for North
right.
Star.
Yeah.
Digital Learn has Spanish, but GCF Global has a bunch of languages.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Microsoft also has a lot of languages.
Which the Microsoft the applied skills, digital skills.
They're
or-
digital skills. They have curriculum and handouts and all sorts of things in lots of languages.
Good. This was good resource sharing live. All right, we have just a few more minutes if there are more questions. Okay, I'm going to ask a question while you all are thinking. And I'm thinking about your use of data and your tracking of your interactions. And I wonder if when we think about the 3 legs of the stool, we often talk about connectivity, devices, and skills. And I know you all have focused on some over others, but are there some of those areas that you find more need in? I know, Shauna, you already mentioned devices was a high need area. Did you all see that in your communities as well, or are you all seeing a variety of needs?
I think you're right about us being biased based on the organizations we work for. Because I work for a training organization, I get a lot of training needs. I mean, all over the place. Devices, yeah, same. There's a big need there. And the thing is about the stool is that you can't have just a couple. Like you have to have all of them. But as far as the gap that exists, I think it's different everywhere. But as long as you make sure that you have all of them is what's important. Also, I know that some organizations extend it to 4 legs or 5 legs, in case you guys weren't familiar. But we also have tech support and applications. But I think tech support and training is kind of the biggest need. And the reason I say that is because if someone comes in for tech support and training, even if they don't have a device or internet, then coming to a place like Ashbury, they would be able to get all of those needs fulfilled.
While we did have a lot of people request devices, that was often what got them to make the first interaction. And then they were like, oh, now I need to do this. Oh, now I need to do this. So having a digital navigator that they could reach out to directly and have an ongoing relationship, we had a lot of folks who relied on that individual to be able to help them with the next step as they came up. So it was really great to see that sort of evolution.
Yeah, devices obviously is number one, but training is our biggest focus now, getting people trained. So I think that is a big need, but getting people to admit that is the hard part. We have a new grant we just got called Age Friendly Grant, where we're working with 20 seniors to provide them each a tablet, getting them connected to the internet first, getting them a tablet, and then working with Generations Online. And if you've not met Toby Dichter here today, she's wonderful. So I'm lucky to have that generation's online. Even though they're national, they're in West Philly, just a few blocks from us. So, but they created an app to help seniors learn how to navigate tablets and mobile devices. So we are working with them, hopefully, to get that done as well, get that training done, and working with community members to actually do that training as well. So, yeah, training I think is our next biggest piece that we know that's missing.
I did have one statistic that I wrote down that I forgot to share. Over like when the pandemic blew up, we saw a really crazy thing happen with our school systems. And with Cleveland Metropolitan School District, they reached out to us and were like, we have to do something. Because after, I think it was like maybe 3 months, over 70% of parents had not registered their child for an account. School's not in session. So like the kids just aren't going to school. Like they literally were just not going. And it's like, you have parents that are working, parents that don't have internet at home, parents that are trying to work from a hotspot, and they've got 3 kids in school. So then CMSD says, okay, let's handle the device problem. They give every kid a laptop. Let's handle the internet problem. They give every kid a hotspot. And then still these numbers are like in the trash. And so that is I just wanted to share that statistic because it does just point to that there is a training issue in our community. I mean, this is with parents, school-age children's parents. We focus a lot on seniors, but just depending on where you live and what you have access to and how your life is set up, I mean, that really, really exposed the need for training. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, and that's actually the biggest grant we've just gotten that the city of Philadelphia's put out there is a caregiver grant around DHL Connect Ed, our free internet program for students. So we're actually specifically working with schools to target caregivers to get them into digital literacy training, get them into North Star program. So that's our biggest focus right now. So.
Yeah, we partner with CMSD to provide training for Clever platform, Seesaw platform, all the Google Classroom and things like that the parents needed to be able to use.
Yeah.
All right, we just have a couple more minutes, and it looks like we have one more question, so we'll end with you, Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie Stenberg, Internet to Community Anchor Program. I'm curious about the stumbling blocks you faced as you implemented these programs and created them. If you could maybe go back in time and do something differently or give people advice about how to not make maybe a mistake that you felt or just a different decision, if you could make that, what would it be?
I think our biggest thing that we wish we would have done differently was we didn't set a parameter around our service area, and we were getting calls from the state next to us. We were getting calls from all over. So making that be part of your initial message, I think it felt really bad at that time to not be able to help so many people.
I'd say that our biggest thing is not having a live operator answering phone calls. Having this warm line, we don't have the staff, we don't have enough navigators to do that, but having this warm line of actually playing telephone tag, I think is our biggest thing I wish we could do, but I'm not sure how we would have done it, how we could even do it now, having enough people out there to answer phone calls live. But that's one of the biggest issues we've had. There's a lot of time wasted, a lot of effort spent playing telephone tag with people.
Our program is still new. We're still making a lot of adaptations as we go along. But since we've started this conversation today, my concern is building this capacity. We just started our advertising and put up our billboards like maybe 2 weeks ago. And we've got bus ads, like side of the bus ads and also audio on the bus ads, which I think is so cool. But I'm waiting to see what's going to happen. So I feel like I need to make a plan for this and get with my group and say, what are we going to do when we get, like you said, 100 calls a week and something like that. So if you can have the foresight to consider that while you're designing your program, I think you'll be a lot better off when you get to the point that I'm at right now.
All right. Well, thank you, and thank you all for having great questions. I see that I've gotten quite a few emails, so do continue to email me if you want to be part of our working group or come talk to me, and I'm sure our panelists hopefully will be available. We've got a 30-minute break now, but thank you again, and thank you for the great panelists for sharing today.